This is episode 710 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I'm very pleased to be joined this week by Senator Bill Scher. He is the new Senate minority leader in New Mexico's legislature on behalf of the Republicans, and he represents parts of San Juan County and the city of Farmington. Welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico, Senator Scher.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, well, glad to have you on. And we're going to talk more extensively later on in the program about a new regulation on heat and heat illness and injury prevention, and that rule at the state level. It's been put forth by the Occupational Health and Safety Bureau of the state, and it's currently being commented on, and folks can comment on that, but we'll talk about that later on. First and foremost, you know, somebody who I've known for a very long time in the New Mexico legislature, Senator Scher, now you are in a position of, leading your caucus in the Senate here. Talk about, some of the things that you did and learned in this first go at it after many years of being in the legislature.
Well, first, we came up with this plan on how things can and should operate. And what we decided is that we could deal with 3 to 5 issues. There's going to be 2,000, there were 2,000 bills introduced. But could we focus our collective efforts on 3 to 5 issues? And that didn't mean any senator can't do, their own bill and things like that. Absolutely. But we settled on 4 issues. The first one was just these egregious environmental standards. So there's a bill out there that would have brought us to zero carbon by 2050, which is 25 years from now. And, we tried to point out that as long as there were living mammals or animals, you weren't going to get to zero carbon, because what's coming out of your face right now is carbon, CO2. But then the trees love CO2, the plants love CO2, they take it in, and they then release oxygen, which we take in. And so we have this symbiotic relationship. But they really want to shut down oil and gas. That is the real goal. This particular bill, though, would have not only shut down oil and gas, it would have shut down all road construction. In fact, almost any construction. It would also shut down ag. It was impossible to beat because it was the Senator Pro Tem's bill, President Pro Tem's bill. And it was early on. It was Senate Bill 4, and it had a lot of support, and we beat it. Another one was paid family medical leave. Again, impossible to stop. All kinds of support behind it, and we beat it. Another one was what I'm calling Trump-proofing New Mexico's immigration policy. So I also referred to it as the Cartel Protection Act, because what this bill said is that no state agency could work with any federal agency, which meant you couldn't even our highway department couldn't even work with the federal highway department. It's like, wow. But this was to make sure that the feds weren't coming in and rounding up any illegal immigrants. But in New Mexico, what that really means is you also couldn't deal with any of the cartels. So Albuquerque is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Why? Because cartels. Albuquerque's the what I refer to as the Amazon distribution center for not only drugs, but also sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And so the cartels bring all these people into Albuquerque and then distribute them around the country from Albuquerque. And so it's dangerous. What the effect of this bill would have been was to make sure that Trump couldn't come in and clean up the cartels in Albuquerque, thus making it continue to stay a dangerous city. We beat that one. Then there were some gun issues out there. One that was so egregious that it really wasn't gonna pass. That was to ban all gas operated firearms, which is almost every modern firearm. And when I say modern, I'm going back to the 1930s, actually, with some of them. And so if you had a bolt action rifle or a revolver or a lever action rifle, okay, those were exempt, but everything else was going to be caught up in this. And that was so bad they weren't going to hear it. But the one that they did push forward was one that would have opened Unfair Trade Practices Act so that you could sue Sig Sauer or Remington or whoever for selling a product that does exactly what it's supposed to do. And of course, the unfair trade practices was designed so if you were selling something that didn't do what it was advertised to do, then you could sue them. But this was going to open it up so that you could sue people that sold you things that did exactly what they were supposed to do, the way they were supposed to do it. But the
So
worst part of that is it opened it up to sue Amazon for the order or UPS for delivering it or anybody. That had a lot of legs to it, but we stopped it. So from our perspective, from my perspective, we took on 4 issues, all 4 of which were impossible to stop. We stopped all 4 of them.
yeah, and that's a great accomplishment. Kudos on doing that. Obviously, you are the minority leader, so actually passing new bills and new laws is uh, very challenging for the party in the minority. But
Yes.
there were a lot of harmful things that were prevented this legislative session, and certainly both you and the House leadership, you know, deserve kudos and credit for being able to manage that situation. Any other aspects of the legislative session? I mean, on the flip side, it is shocking that Republicans remain in the minority, considering how mismanaged the state of New Mexico remains under the current Democratic rule. We have, uh, we have a situation where we have billions in budget surpluses every year in recent memory. None of that money is being returned to the citizens. Our education system's ranked dead last. Crime is out of control. The National Guard's deployed in Albuquerque. The governor remains essentially able to declare and then govern in a emergency unfettered. It's just poor governance all around. Obviously, that gets into elections and how you guys try to cut into the governor's power. But you get 1 seat this last November, so that was a starting point, right?
Yes. Well, I do want to mention that Gail Armstrong, who's the minority leader in the House, uh, we've been working together. So when I say we stopped it, I mean Republicans stopped it. So not necessarily just Senate Republicans, but Republicans stopped these bills. And that was largely because the 2 of us worked together, our caucuses worked together, as well as with the Republican Party.
And that's
So
not always been the case. There's not
that's
always been a great working relationship between the House and the Senate. So
that's
um, you've been there a long time. I don't need you to throw anyone under the proverbial bus, but just talk about that, and then we'll get on to the heat regulation.
right. Well, before we went into the session, I'm an infantry officer, and so I actually wrote an operations order for us, and then with that, we got buy-in from the state party chair Amy Barella, and then the House Minority Leader Gail Armstrong. There were some tweaks in there, but just that unity was huge. The 3 of us working off the same plan. But I also want to give credit to other groups. So there were other groups that were out there that were fighting hard. But I don't think that the business community could have stopped paid family medical leave without us working behind the scenes. I don't think oil and gas could have stopped the egregious environmental bills by themselves without us behind the scenes. But we couldn't have stopped it either without them. And I think that's the important part here is that for the first time, not only are the various parts of the Republican Party working together, but the industries that were involved and us work together. And that's how all of that got stopped. Then you mentioned all of the money. We've had a 75% increase in our budget since Lujan Grisham became governor. Now, it wasn't anything that she did. It was because all of a sudden we had a lot of oil and gas money, a lot of oil and gas money. So a 75% increase in our budget. But do 75% more of our kids graduate from high school? No. Do 75% more read at grade level? No. Are our roads 75% better? No. Is crime 75% down? No. So we've been pouring money at things and getting the same results that we always got because it's not money, it's something else. And yet, the only thing we can talk about it when you say, hey, we need to improve our education system. Oh, we need more money. Well, no, we put a lot of money in it and nothing's changed. So,
Got it. Well, I'm sure that there are plans to try to eat into that Democrat majority, although you won't get a bite at that apple until 2028 because the Senate's up only every 4 years in New Mexico. So
yes.
we'll have to have that conversation another time. So let's move on to this proposed heat regulation that, just to be clear, you can, as an individual or business owner or whatever you may be, comment on this through May 30th. So I have a link at errorsofenchantment.com to this information, but let's discuss the genesis of this and why you have concerns about it. So why don't you just take it away with who is the party proposing this?
Well, it's our state environment department that's put forth this proposal, and what it really without going into a lot of details, mostly because I can't remember all the details, but when the temperature gets so high, and it's not just the ambient temperature, but the heat index, as they call it, then there's a requirement for breaks and water every so often. But it starts at 80 degrees. So if you get to 80 degrees, then you have to take a break every 15-minute break every hour, and you have to drink water. Okay, well, that makes sense that people drink water, but 80 degrees in New Mexico is just, a spring morning. It's not, we're not suffering heat stroke then. But the worst part of this is that you have to have the bookkeeping. So all of a sudden now, no matter where somebody's working, you have to know what the temperature is at that spot. And then you have to make sure that they stop and take their break and drink their water. So if you've got somebody out there welding on some kind of pipeline out in the middle of nowhere, you also have to have somebody then that is in contact with them to say, hey, it's time for your break, stop, drink water, and sit in the shade. Okay. I don't know if anybody at the environment department's noticed, but there's a lot of places in New Mexico where there's not a lot of shade. There's just not a lot of trees. Okay. Which means now you have to bring your own shade. You have to have something to set up so you can sit under it, and you have to have your water, and then you go sit in the shade for 15 minutes or more, depending on how hot it gets. And this is every hour. So now you will have a 3/4 time employee instead of a full-time employee. And right now, the folks that are out there, well, they bring what they want to drink. It might be Gatorade, not water, okay, or something else. And when they're thirsty, they stop, they take a drink, and then they get back to work. Under this new system, though, there's got to be somebody that keeps track of the temperature, keeps track of when you started and when your breaks have to happen. So you make sure that they're there for the full time, that they've got their shade. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe I'm out there and I'm welding, and so the time comes up for a break, but I've got another 4 or 5 minutes worth of welding to do to finish this particular piece of the job. Well, if I go ahead and finish the job, now all of a sudden people have violated the rules. This business that hired me violated the rules, and they get to be fined by the environment department. Or I can stop in the middle of my project, thus risking that the weld is not complete and done properly, therefore creating an environment where there could be a leak in whatever pipe I'm welding on. So why? Why don't you let me finish the weld and then go take a drink of water? And if I'm really tired at that point, because I've been, not only in the sun, but also sitting there with welding equipment on and a hot welder in front of me, well, maybe I need to sit down for 20 minutes after I'm done. Or maybe I'm good. Let's go on to the next project. So these things just don't make any sense to me. You got these other situations. So I'm going to finish my job. Now I'm going to be in my truck for 30 minutes with the air conditioner while I go to the next site. But that doesn't count. So it's just a bizarre thing that they're trying to, once again, micromanage everything about everybody all the time, as if we are too stupid to know when to drink water.
Now, is this something that you ultimately pin on Governor Lujan Grisham and her kind of approach to government, or is this something that just you think the regulatory entities are behind? Like, I assume the governor doesn't talk to you about any of this stuff before she does it, but you've got to be on your on your tiptoes when it comes to some of this government regulation, because this governor likes to throw regulations against the wall and see what sticks. What do you see as her approach with this particular rule?
Well, what I suspect is some bureaucrat somewhere along the way said, hey, we really have to do this. By the way, nobody's died. No employees died out there in the middle of nowhere from not having water. Do people get sick? Yeah. But then you give them some water, put them in the shade, and then they get over it. So, not that it never happens, but it's rare in New Mexico that anybody even suffers from heat stroke because we're not stupid. We know how to drink water. But some bureaucrat decided, hey, we really need to deal with this because somebody got sick. And so they came up with the rule. And then the cabinet secretary said, yeah, that's a great rule. Let's write it up. And the governor may or may not have known about the rule at the moment. But when it comes up, she can always say, you know what, guys, let's not do this one. But she's not done that. This is still progressing, which means that she doesn't have a problem with it. And I find that just bizarre that she thinks that she has to take care of every single person in New Mexico, no matter what their job is. And, we've got people that are out there picking chilies or pecans or planting or, moving the cattle or whatever. Okay, well, when you're moving cattle, you don't really stop every 45 minutes or even 30 minutes, depending on how hot it is. You don't stop. You keep on doing what you're doing. But most people have water with them. So you're sitting on your horse, you're moving the cattle, and you reach down and you bring out your water bottle and you take a sip of water and you put it back where you got it, and you just keep on doing what you're doing. But no, under her rule, you have to stop driving the cattle.
Yeah, and my understanding is that 80 degrees, that's a pretty aggressive number, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no exemption for indoor workers, people working at a fry machine or a grill at a restaurant. That could easily hit 80 degrees, and then you have the challenge just of keeping an eye on or having an employee sitting there monitoring the situation. That imposes a lot of costs, even if you never actually hit the 80-degree threshold and have to impose all of these additional rules. Is that your understanding as well of the regulation?
Absolutely. That's the way I understand it anyway. Now they can get out there and say, oh, no, Senator Sherr got that wrong. Okay, great. but there's still somebody keeping record of what's going on. And to me, that's the worst part of it is so we can look and say, okay, in Farmington, it's going to be 89 degrees today. But that doesn't mean it's 89 degrees where I am. It might be 93 or it might be 80 because, where am I? Am I naturally working in the shade already? Don't know. But also, how hard am I working? So just because I'm outside and it's 80 degrees or 89 degrees or 95 degrees doesn't mean that I am particularly working hard. I might be doing something simple. I might be mowing my yard, for example. Okay. And there's trees in my yard. So it's not, egregiously hot. Or I could be welding on a pipe in the middle of the desert somewhere where it's really hot. In Under this rule, are you going to have a thermometer next to where I am, or are you just going to take the general temperature that the Weather Channel or whoever says that it is?
Yeah,
And it
no,
just doesn't account for human activity. It doesn't account for human nature.
right. So let's talk a little bit about the Four Corners itself. And folks, again, go to errorsofenchantment.com and we'll make sure that the heat rule information and your ability to comment on it is prominently displayed there. Do you have any additional mechanisms for people to go and comment on that? Because it is important that folks make sure that they get their voice heard. I just don't know if the Republican Party or the Senate caucus is doing anything on this before we move on.
All we've done is put out a link to go to their website, and I don't remember that link right off, but
Okay.
yes. So GOP Senate NM, uh, that's our website. Go there, look it up. But
Okay.
there's just a link, and you write your own notes in there. Use your own words. We don't have a form letter to send.
Fair enough. And that's not the best way to do this kind of thing anyway. It's to
Mm.
have some of your own thoughts in there and explain why, to the policymaker, this is going to impact you, not
Yes.
just an abstract thing. So, all right. So let's move on. You are, of course, from the Four Corners in Farmington, and uh, you're still dealing with the impact of the closure of the San Juan Generating Station. Of course, PNM is going to be implementing rate increases here in the not too distant future. And of course, as we speak this morning, it's just been announced that BlackRock is apparently going to be attempting to, there's no guarantees in this world, but attempting to purchase PNM. It's essentially a private equity firm.
Yes.
Uh, so why don't we kind of combine an update on the Four Corners and its recovery from the closure of the San Juan Generating Station, as well, and what, if anything, has been done to help that area economically and with its tax base being impacted. And then we can talk a little bit more about PNM and its situation broadly. I know this is very brand new information regarding the purchase, but it's been rumored for some time, so it's not totally new. So why don't you take it away on those two topics?
Well, first of all, when PNM decided that they needed to close the cleanest coal-fired power plant in the world, which was insane because nothing was coming out of that plant, everything, all the pollutants were captured. The only thing coming out of that plant was electricity and CO2, and we were about to take the CO2 and capture that as well. But because of political pressures from around the world, coal is evil, and so they had to kill the coal plant that powers Albuquerque and other parts of the state. And then they promised that the rates wouldn't go up, but they have gone up and they're going to go up again. And then they promised that they would invest in San Juan County with wind and solar. Well, the wind doesn't really work here in San Juan County. Solar does. And so they've taken a power plant that you couldn't see from the road with a total acreage of about 100 acres, and not all of that was used. And now they're replacing that with 1,600 acres of solar panels. Yay, except the 1,600 acres of solar panels will produce about 1/10 of the power of that power plant. And of course, you sterilize the land underneath it. So the grass and the shrubs and things that would normally grow there, which absorb CO2, have now been taken off the grid, so to speak. And of course, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but solar panels get hot. And so we're reflecting heat back into the world. And they're going to say, oh, well, we've created all these jobs. Well, yes, they've created construction jobs, but they're temporary jobs. When the thing's finished, it's finished. And then you're going to have a handful of permanent jobs.
And that electricity
So,
is not steady. It's dependent on the
nope.
sun shining and it being a nice sunny day, which we typically do have in New Mexico. But just because the clouds come over the sun doesn't mean you're not interested in watching TV or running the dishwasher, or you need to pump oxygen because you're having breathing issues. All
Yes.
kinds of stuff.
Yes. So you got all of the medical equipment that's at home, but you also have the medical equipment that's at the doctor's offices and the hospitals. Now,
Right.
hospitals have generators, but most of the doctor's offices, they're just on the grid. And so all of a sudden now we don't have reliable and affordable energy or abundant energy. So, but we're also at the same time talking about more electric vehicles, more electricity use everywhere. You have to take out your gas stove and put in an electric stove and things like that. So
Well, and
greatly
AI,
increasing.
and all kinds of, I know there's talk of bringing AI related businesses to New Mexico. I know that was
Yes.
considered during the session, and that's a huge energy suck as well.
Yes. And yet we're closing down power plants, and it just doesn't make any sense. If you really want to help the environment, well, you help the Chinese and Indians clean up their power plants. You don't shut down the cleanest coal-fired power plant in the world. You deal with those that are in China, and of course that's not what New Mexico does. So it's just insane that we decide that we have to destroy America's economy or New Mexico's economy because China's polluting the world. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, obviously, your area of the state is a natural gas producing state, the San Juan Basin. Uh,
Yes.
they could have easily, and if you start with the assumption that you got to get rid of coal, whether that's an accurate assumption or not, we kind of touched on a little bit. I don't think either of us agree that that's necessary, but say you start with that assumption. How about just replacing San Juan Generating Station with a few large natural gas plants? You've got all the infrastructure there. You don't need a bunch of new wires to be run, and you're using locally produced natural gas. I assume that was you were part of those discussions with the governor's office on the Energy
Yes.
Transition Act, and what kind of reaction did you get, if any, from either PNM or the governor when they were presented with that kind of viewpoint?
Well, PNM was pretty aggressive in that you couldn't just retrofit the current power plant. Well, the current power plant is dead now. They've actually blown up big chunks of it. So we're not doing anything with the current power plant. And they had to destroy it because they were afraid somebody might bring it back online. So quite literally, the environmentalists made them destroy that power plant. Okay, so we can't retrofit it, but we can build new power plants because right here we have the transmission lines that go a lot of places. So our transmission lines go to San Diego and Los Angeles and points in between. So it makes sense to have lots of power produced here. But again, the environmentalists, they don't like fossil fuel. They don't care if it's oil, gas, or coal. They don't want any of it. So we're not building the new gas power plant that we should be building. The city of Farmington is. City of Farmington was part owner in that power plant, and they weren't allowed to do anything with it, even though the ownership agreement said they could. But because it had to be destroyed as part of the environmentalist religion, then they're now building gas generators for the city of Farmington. But the big gas generators that would have powered the rest of the western United States, or at least a big chunk of the western United States, including Albuquerque, we're not doing it. We're putting up solar panels that'll produce a little bit of electricity in comparison to what we could have produced. And this is a problem. But also, the natural gas that we have, uh, Japan and other Asian companies would buy all of the natural gas we could get to them. And how you do that is you put it in a pipeline, you get it to the West Coast where we have liquefied natural gas plants. So you take the gas and turn it into liquid, you put it on a ship, you send it wherever it wants to go in the world. They get it, they turn it back into gas, and then they use it instead of using whatever other polluting sources they have there now. So it certainly helps with New Mexico's economy, with the United States economy, and it helps the countries that need reliable energy, clean, reliable energy. It helps them too, except it's not perfectly clean. So the environmentalists don't want to do that. And Gavin Newsom from California, governor of California, has closed down the liquefied natural gas plants at all of the ports in California. So we can get the gas there, but that's where it stops because, so why send it there? So what we've done is we've harmed the economy of New Mexico and San Juan County by closing down a very productive power plant, and we prevent anything else because we've closed down opportunity to sell gas to Asia. So yay for PNM and the environmentalists.
All right. Well, thank you for those thoughts. And it's going to be interesting to watch how this whole uh, debate or potential conflict is resolved with regard to the ownership of PNM. The environmentalists, at least the radical ones, were not fans of the previous iteration. Ivan Grid over in Spain obviously was rejected. And there were people on both sides of the ideological spectrum with regard to that. But what BlackRock will have in terms of success in taking over what is by far the largest publicly traded company in the state of New Mexico,
Yes.
with an $11.5 billion sale, will be fascinating to watch. And obviously, PNM's impact on the Four Corners is not what it once was since the sale, but could be some real impacts across the board. And of course, PNM has announced that they'll be charging a $12 additional average cost on people and their utility bills over the next essentially 2 years to pay for their beloved energy transition. So a lot of pieces moving here on this issue, but kind of related and a little bit different. Four Corners economy. Can you share, how things are going in that particular area? Natural gas prices are traditionally a big indicator for your part of the state. Prices aren't certainly as low as they have been, but they're not as high as they could be. Simply the supply of natural gas is so great, and the challenge of getting it out of that region, as you mentioned, the pipelines is a tough one because Asian countries do want our natural gas, plus other countries do as well. But kind of give us an economic report on the Four Corners. How are things up there?
So it's interesting. Our economy, while not as good as it was, is still chugging along. And a big part of that is we're the shopping center for about 250,000 people, even though Farmington has about 46,000, because people from the Navajo Nation, even from Gallup or Durango, and of course other people in San Juan County come to Farmington to shop. So that's been for a long time and still is. A lot of our oil field companies, they're still housed here. but they're drilling wells in the Permian Basin or in Pennsylvania or in uh, North Dakota, wherever. So there's still that economic activity that happens, even though the wells aren't being drilled here, at least not like they used to be. So one of the things that we did do this session is we defined who owns the pore space, and the pore space is that space between the granules of sand under your feet. And so that's where you put CO2 after you captured it. So we defined that, and we defined the liability for who's responsible and for how long and what they have to do. Environmentalists tried to stop that very hard, and yet we managed to get that one through. And so what that means is now we have some other economic opportunities here because we have the right geology for carbon capture. And at least in San Juan County, I don't think there's a square inch of San Juan County that we don't know exactly what's underneath our feet and how deep it is. So, so we have a huge advantage. And because of our natural gas, we can now turn that natural gas into hydrogen. People will talk about how it costs more to do that. Yes, it does. But if people are demanding hydrogen, well, we have an opportunity to give them hydrogen. So there you go. The Escalante power plant, which is near Grants, wants to convert their power plant to hydrogen. So this would help. But also fertilizer. Fertilizer's made out of urea. Urea's comes from the natural gas. When you break it apart, you still have to deal with the CO2 if that's important to you. And so now we can put that in the pore space below our feet, and it will stay there forever. People are worried about, oh, what if there's a blowout? Well, it doesn't blow up. It's CO2. Okay, it's same stuff coming out of your mouth. So you cap it, but the whole idea of a blowout in natural gas or for CO2 is just bizarre that anybody would come up with that. But so there are some economic opportunities because of this defining of pore space and the liability that goes with it. So we could still be doing all right. We might still have a chance to use our natural gas.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Senator Scher. Any websites or information you would like to point people to as we conclude our conversation today?
I just want you to look for the for our website for the GOP. So it's nmsenategop.com, and there you go, and then everybody's off and running.
All right. Well, thank you for your dedication to New Mexico and your work in the legislature during this 60-day session, but of course for many, many years. And we'll see you in Santa Fe in the 30-day session in January. If not before, hopefully I'll make it to the Four Corners sometime this summer, and we'll catch up then. But with that, appreciate all your hard work, Senator Scher, and thank you for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.